a Motorsport Podcast Network production. Hey everyone, welcome along. It's another week. It's the V8 Sleuth Podcast for Autobarn, celebrating 40 years of delivering you top gear at low prices. Shop in store or online today. Get those fingers on the keyboard at autobarn.com.au, or on your phone, of course, because you know that's how you listen and do a lot of stuff these days. We love the support, by the way, that the Sleuth Faithful give. Before I get into the chat with Dean Canto, there's now a way that you can become a bigger part of our family via V8 Sleuth Podcast Plus. There's ad-free episodes, bonus extra episodes as well. Get on board now. The link is in the show notes of this episode. It's v8sleuth.supportingcast.fm. Sign up, become a member, become part of the family, and enjoy those benefits too. One of them is a Pod Plus Extra app with Dean Canto, my guest on this podcast. 10 questions, not all motorsport, a couple of food, a couple of this, a couple of that, some interesting answers as well. That's ready and waiting if you're part of Podcast Plus. I'll get it out straight. Now, if you've got some questions, if you've got some potential guests that you'd like to have us look at trying to put together, get in touch with us via the V8 Sleuth website. There's a contact page on the site, or hit us up on the socials. You know where to find us. Now, I've been looking forward to doing this one for a couple of years. Dean Canto's a guy I've known for, well, I reckon about a quarter of a century, if not a couple more years than that. He's been a winner in so many cars, and you don't see him so much these days. He's not racing supercars, endurance races anymore, but he's still a rev head through and through. He's still connected to motorsport and automotive, and he gets to look after some pretty cool cars and get to drive them as well. That'll be in this episode. We'll bring you up to speed on what he's doing these days. But he's a two-time winner of the V8 Supercar Development Series, which of course is now Super2. He's a veteran of the Bathurst 1000. He was a main Supercars championship driver that went in and out again of the main game. He was a foundation Triple Eight driver. A lot of people forget that about Dean. He was driving for Briggs Motorsport in 2003 when Roland Dane and Ludo Lacroix and the whole Triple Eight team came along and purchased that team, and of course the juggernaut that it's become. There's plenty of twists and turns in this two-part chat with Dino, and as you'll hear, he's so open and so honest about the occasions along the journey where he felt he wasn't treated in a way that he'd expected to have been treated. You'll hear those ones. You'll know where they are when you hear them in the pod. It was great to catch up with Dean, so relax and enjoy part one of the V8 Sleuth podcast for Autobarn with Dean Canto. Dean Canto, hello, my friend. It's nice to chat to you, and it's kind of, well, I'm not sure if this is good or bad, mate, but we are celebrating the 25th anniversary this year of what's now Super 2, but for you and I, as much younger blokes, it was the Konica V8 Lite series. It's kind of a series and a victory that helped catapult you and your career, but is it scary to think that it's 25 years? Because I reckon it's scary. What about you?
I guess you're only as old as you feel, and I think I'm almost about to hit adulthood. Yes, when we look at it as a number, it's scary that it's been already that long. But yeah, here we are. We're still involved in motorsport in some capacity, and yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. It's led me to be where I am now.
Yeah, we'll touch on the 2000. Konica program in a sec, but let's just fast forward to the now. So as we're having this chat, you're at work in a factory at The Bend. For those who might not have seen or kept up with you, we don't see as much of you now. You're not racing supercars at the endurance races and the like, but what are you doing now? Because the video that I'm looking at as we talk to one another today on our screens, you've got some pretty cool cars in there behind you. What is it that you're doing? What's Edge Motorsport and what's it all about?
So I've got a motorsports workshop based at the Bend Motorsport Park. We're a turnkey provider, so a lot of businessmen that want to enjoy going out on track. They leave their race cars. I mean, the majority of them are race cars. The progression from road car to track car to dedicated race car is the normal. And yeah, we're turnkey. They arrive, their car's ready in the garage on a track day, and they just hop in and enjoy their toys. We wheel them back over into the workshop and service, maintain them, coaching, all laundry services. Pretty much, they just get treated like rock stars. And there's Ferraris, there's Lambos, there's LMP3 cars. a wide range, but yeah, none of them are old, dirty shit boxes.
There's no, that's the quote of the podcast already. We've only gone a few minutes in. Does this mean too that you get behind the wheel a little bit in coaching and helping teach some of these guys how to get the best out of these cars and the best out of themselves?
Yeah, for a few of them that are quite driven, obviously, wanting to improve your driving. I'm still quicker than them. I mightn't be as quick as some of the main drivers in the V8 still, but yeah, obviously a big part of my business is coaching, and I've only got a few years' experience under my belt. And yeah, I drive their cars, which still gives me my fix, I guess. It's quite good. It's a very awesome technical track here at the Bend, and I kind of in love with these modern day factory built race cars. They're an awesome bit of machinery, and who doesn't love the sound of a naturally aspirated V10?
That's true. That's a good problem to have at work every day when you got stuff like that floating around, mate. What do we describe you as now? Are you a race driver that'll answer a phone call if someone wanted to put you in a car? Are you looking for gigs? Are you semi-retired? What do we frame you as? I hate trying to put labels on people, but where are you at in your driving career now? Are you kind of done or done with chasing, but happy to take calls and do things that pop up that work for you?
Yeah, look, I mean, you never retire as a race driver. I mean, we're all competitors. Competitiveness is something we strive for. So, yes, obviously, if something came up and it worked within my goals and family, for sure, I'd still drive. 2 years ago, I raced in the Lamborghini Super2 Series here at the Bend, and that worked within being a home event. Didn't have to go anywhere. Family's probably the most important thing to me. So going away and not having time with them comes at a cost. I got to do Bathurst 21 times in the V8s, and I was probably in the good area where we could earn a living out of it. Whereas I think 2021, I got asked to do Bathurst with one of the V8 teams, and they said, "Oh, we'll cover your costs." And I mean, my costs are time away from family, time away from work, your life insurance, your new helmet, your license. So we've got costs that are there, and yeah, I'd still like, Bathurst, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, it's you're a professional, you should get paid for what you do. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, yes, if it's going to cover some costs and things like that, no dramas, but I'm not just going to go and drive a car for the sake of driving it and have time away from my family without it having some sort of remuneration.
Yeah, and I guess the Dean of 10, 15 years ago is not turning down an opportunity if there's no other opportunities going, but different place, different time, different part of your life. It's not the be-all and end-all. There's more to it in life than just going car racing every second weekend.
Yeah, I mean, as a driver, it's a selfish sport. It's it's you have to be selfish. I probably wasn't selfish enough in my career, and other drivers that get in underneath you or make sure they get you out of a team. But yeah, it's different time, different life. I had good fun doing it while I did it. You're always chasing that next win or whatever, but I can't. I've got no regrets. I'm sure I
Yeah.
would have liked to done more, but yeah, that's like I said, no regrets. I've met my wife at an event, had kids with her. I've got two grown men that are taller than me. Not that I didn't set a very high benchmark, but they're both taller than me now, and yeah, wouldn't have it any other way.
You said there about not being selfish enough. Was there a particular era where maybe you should have pushed a bit harder at that, or you kind of let things slip away? Unpack that for me a little bit on when you look back on it. I mean, it's easy to look back on things and identify things that you might not have spotted at the time or didn't feel you could have done anything differently, but where in that scheme of your career could you have done that, and would it have really changed anything?
Yeah, look, I mean, from the start, I've never had a mentor. I mean, mentors are a big part of it now, and best advice I can give to some young up and comer is to have a mentor. You take Piastri for example. He's got Mark Webber in his corner, and and a lot of guys, young guys in V8 Supercars. I'm sure Paul Morris takes credit for more than what he should, but he's a mentor nonetheless. But yeah, mentors are a big part, and I never had one. I was naive, took it as teammates are mates, and they're not actually. The mate pick can probably be deleted. Sorry, but yeah, I mean, maybe my second stint in full time with GRM, my engineer wasn't full time. My mechanic was useless as far as the car was never prepared properly, and I just took it for granted that people were doing their job. But when things go wrong, behind your back, they're throwing you under the bus. So, I guess there's probably that period there at GRM. I probably could have done things differently on reflection, but yeah, it is what it is. It's each their own. Everyone has their own journey, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've got some trophies. I'm not too stressed.
No, exactly right. There's some surfboards for sure.
Yeah.
Let's go back 2000. So it's a really interesting time where there's this new feeder second tier V8 Supercar series. Supercars has grown so much at that time that they kind of had more cars than they could really fit and needed somewhere for the privateers to go. But it also opened up the door to the youth that were, kind of trying to get to that next step. So how did the pathway lead for you? 2000, you're in an ex-Glen Seaton Falcon. You win that series, which was 5 rounds. And back in those days, they were standalone rounds. They weren't a support for the main V8 Supercars. They were their own race meetings, completely independent of what was in the Shell series. So how did that all come together? How did you pull it together? Who got involved? And I mean, clearly the result worked out well, but how did it all sort of click together? Because I remember a few familiar faces being dragged into that program for you.
Yeah, I mean, end of '98, I think there's a guy that used to write for Auto Action, Terry Steer, sort of must have pricked some attention when he saw me in my first year of racing cars. In '99, I did Super Tours, which was still a reasonably popular category. And then Terry managed to get some sponsorship to go and buy the new series, the Konica series. Obviously, no one had any idea on where it would end up and how big it would get, but I think it was the main teams were looking at ways to get rid of their old cars and why not start a series up. And here we are, 25 years later. It was obviously one of the best decisions they ever made. It's probably the only way they make profit in that series now anyway with that series. Obviously hopped out there. Back in those days, the cars were still very much a road car that was converted into a race car or built to be a race car, but very basic. You didn't need engineers. You didn't need 5 crew. You start them up and you send them on track and turn the wheel. They were probably good fun cars. I mean, I think back to them and it was like I just hopped in and drove. Again, as a young kid, I never had much guidance. My old man was a racer, but nothing to a high level. And for whatever reason, the platform seemed to suit me.
And that's a period, Dino, where having someone, and I remember Terry well, someone who identified an opportunity, had a bit of money, wanted to support someone young, make it happen. I mean, we're not talking about big, huge B-double transporters with some of those leading Konica cars in those early years. We're talking about basically small independent teams on the back of trailers, that type of thing. Couple of mates, rope in a bloke who used to work in V8s or something like that, and just go and run your own thing. I remember it being quite a fun, lower key sort of a series and a setup until the main game team started to really cotton on to the fact that not only could they sell cars there, but they could blood co-drivers and do all that sort of stuff. But it was a good fun time, wasn't it? I mean, it was that sort of thing where it was off the radar of the main championship not being on those weekends. There was a cool little vibe to that little paddock of V8 lights and that whole little Konica series world in that era.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I used to finish a day of work in the old man's panel shop and had a little warehouse across the road from it and where the race car lived. And it was just me and a couple of my go-karting mates used to do the maintenance on it and get it ready for the next round. And go to the race meetings. Yeah, we raced hard and we still took that side of it seriously, but we had fun, which is what I think is missing a lot in motorsport these days. But back then, the stakes weren't high. We were just some people having some fun and enjoying our motorsport.
And there was guys like, yourself, Ryan McLeod, Wayne Wakefield, Matthew White. That was kind of the initial crop of what was V8 lights. I think that tag only lasted a year because they kind of went, oh, there's nothing light about this. This is actually its own series with its own special elements. So they kind of dumped the lights tag after a year. But
we had Bezzy come in, Stone Brothers, round 4, I think.
Yeah, at Lakeside, penultimate round. Yeah.
Yep.
And that instantly changed the game because it went from guys like yourself and Matty White and Wakefield and Ryan McLeod, who was in a JFR car, to suddenly Stone Brothers, level 1 top tier team, albeit with one of their older cars, and all of a sudden the goalposts change.
Yeah, I remember at Lakeside, we never had to worry about our car being underweight on the scales because it was a heavy girl. And then I remember Stone Brothers after qualifying at Lakeside, and it was like they would, bang on the even maybe borderline. But it was all of a sudden like, okay, I was driving just to a level, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, might need to pick this up a bit. But it was good to have, a benchmark come in that, obviously raised us all and just meant we had to step things up a little bit.
And that's always been the argument for top tier teams and drivers running in that series. It gives a benchmark and everyone gets an idea of where they're really at. Do you have a standout memory from that 2000 series that you managed to win?
Probably the biggest thing was doing my first ever burnout because I didn't have a misspent youth. And at Lakeside,
I was going to say the burnout to win the title. Mallala in those days was the Konica Series final. It was some of your best work. It didn't look like a bloke who'd never done a burnout in his life. I remember it being a pretty good one.
Yeah, and I remember getting on the radio at the end, and one of the guys on the crew was quite loose, and he said, "Yeah, just wind your brake bias all the way to the front and just give it a rev and step on you step off the clutch." I was like, "Okay," and it was cool. I actually still have the video of the whole series just on digital format, but I actually came across it on one of my hard drives the other week watching this big smoke show and managing to keep it within the width of the main straight in front of the 10 people that were in the crowd.
Oh, come on now. There were a couple more than that back in the day for the Konica final at Mallala. But do you remember winning that title and thinking, I've just punched my ticket, this is going to get me in the main game? Or was it kind of that's nice, that's great, but it doesn't guarantee me anything?
I probably didn't think that back then. We were still obviously it's first year, and prior to Konica Series, I think it was Formula Ford was really the one producing drivers to go into enduros and things like that. So it was still an unknown, but I was just having fun, man. Honestly, it was. I hadn't future planned, as I said. There was no one saying, "Oh, you need to be this professional or this or that." It was just me driving a race car and enjoying myself.
And I guess at that point, you're working in your dad's smash repair joint during the day, helping prep and run this EL Falcon, as it was at the time. So is this purely being funded by Terry Steer? Are you having to go and find some money and make this happen? How's this all happening? Because, we've seen amazing patrons of motorsport and of young drivers and development over the years. But how did this all work, and did you have to sort of hustle to get this all together, or was it a kind of thing where you could just concentrate on prepping the car, driving the car, and going as fast as you can?
As far as doing the work, I've always been a hands-on person, so that side of things, like I said, after hours, I would do all the prep with my mates. I think from memory, Terry bought the car for 140 grand, which is, you can't really go and do that these days. But running costs back then, geez, man, I tell you, you used to just put fuel in it and put the tires on it and send it. It was so grassroots racing, cheap to run. I didn't get involved in the financial side, whether my father and Terry sort of sorted all that out. But some people through my father's business used to do some sponsorship just in the background to cover all the incidentals. And but like I said, back in those days, you could run things on a shoestring budget. They were so cheap to run.
Yeah, we've got to that point of our time where it's kind of, back in my day, and it was cheaper back in the day, but I got to tell you, it was a lot simpler back then. I mean, when you look at a budget, even for inflation, 25 years of money changing, it's definitely taken a step through the roof. But, mate, I want to just rewind a little bit back before that, because as you mentioned, obviously you came out of karts, you went into a Subaru in the GTP series to sort of learn your way in car racing. But I have this great memory. I think it's the first time I met you, actually. The Maserati, you knew exactly where I was going with the great Alfie Costanzo. It was a Maserati Ghibli, which I don't think I've seen one before or since. But you teamed up with him, and he's a legend of open-wheeler racing, to win a 1 hour GTP sort of mini enduro at the Sandown 500 so that was in 98. So if we were going to look at all those little milestone things along the way, and the 2000 Konica series is definitely one of those, that win at Sandown in 98 was probably the first big ticket thing that we all sort of went, ooh, this Canto bloke, he goes all right. What do you remember all that? Because I remember it being this really pivotal moment for you as I guess, what are you then, 18 or something like that?
18, yeah. I think that was maybe, thinking back and reflecting, that was probably, because was that a Supercars round weekend? No, it wasn't, was it? It was just a standalone thing?
It was the Sandown 500. It was Sandown 500 in September. Yeah.
Yeah, see, yep. I mean, I was just out there again as a young kid, just hanging on to this 500 horsepower or 600 horsepower thing that had no boost control, and when it came on, you had to hang on. But left-hand drive, terrible gearbox, stiff as hell because Alfie was an F1 driver, so he liked the thing to be super stiff. And I just hopped in and went, turn the wheel, shift the gears, past people, laughing, carrying on. Sideways at times. Yeah, I get scared going sideways these days, but when you're a young kid and you got no fear, and I guess it was, like you said, it's probably something that people went, oh wow, this guy's he can turn a steering wheel.
That car doesn't sound like it's really one that's warm in your heart. It sounds like it was something that was a bit different and a bit weird.
Yeah, it was. It probably could have been set up better, but again, it wasn't run by a super professional team, and but it was fun to drive. I remember how much of a beast it was, and then we also raced at a Gold Coast, and again, just very, very stiff, but lots of power and rear wheel drive, lots of fun. It's as a young kid, you've gone from go-karts to production car, which was reasonably quick, but then to hop into something like that, it was pretty cool.
It's something very, very different to any other car that was going around at the time. You mentioned before too, the next year, Super Tourers with Peter Hills, the Mondeos. I mean, Super Touring at the time, that was probably the last solid-ish year that it had. It dropped right away after that. But the V6 Mondeo, what a cool sounding car. Whether you love driving them or not, or you love watching them or not, you can't deny that car was something cool. That noise that car punched out was pretty awesome.
Yeah, look, they were they came to us. So Michael Massey, his mother at the time was seeing Peter Hills, and we'd known the Massey family, and then obviously that deal sort of came together via that in a convoluted way. But they were a Roush built Mondeo.
Yeah,
they were the older shape.
And I think you guys reskinned them, didn't you? To the
more
modern
So we
shape.
changed the front and rear ends and made them look more modern. And look, that's that era that we had, because it was still the old platform. The engine was quite high compared to, like, you open the bonnet of the Volvo, which was probably the next generation Super Tourer. They were probably engineered better, but like you said, that V6 thing, you kind of go, it doesn't go together. A V6 sounding like they did. But yeah, they were, again, something different. Front wheel drive, big 19-inch wheels. It was probably the last time that Super Tours was obviously quite a big field that year.
Yeah, amazing cars, and that was, you had, as you mentioned, the Volvo factory team with those S40s. You had Paul Morris in an ex-factory BM. The Audi boys, Brad Jones was always a constant in super touring. So if you could be one of those independents, i.e. non-factory, and run in the top 5, top 6, win the independents, that was getting you attention as well. It was still something that people looked at as, hey, if you're doing that, you must be going good. You're someone to keep an eye on here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was still a predominant series then, so I guess results something supercars look at. I mean, again, I had no mentor. I had no goal as a young kid to ever, strive for supercars. I just sort of was happy just racing and driving.
I wanted to ask you here something. We talk about you in Konica Series as kind of being your first V8 appearance, but there was actually one that I completely forgot about, and I'm not sure where this is in your memory bank, but Oran Park, 1999.
Recruitment challenge.
Challenge recruitment, Commodore. Yep. As it turns out, that's the Larry Perkins Bathurst winning car from, I think, 93, the famous Holden-powered VP Commodore. So, but you didn't get to start because you were a non-qualifier. In those days, there were so many cars, they actually had to have non-qualifiers that couldn't line up on the grid, or they sat there as a reserve hoping that a couple of cars might drop out during the course of the day. But what do you remember about that and how that all came together? Because that's kind of the debut that wasn't a debut.
Yeah, I remember we obviously had some kind of race. Was it a Repicharge or something first?
There was a privateer dash in those days on the Saturday.
Yeah, okay. Right. The biggest memory I have was getting on the gas too early on the last corner and having half a lose and ending up nose in towards the wall on the last corner. And no one had explained reverse gear to me in one of those things before on the old H pattern. And as I'm there trying to, six speed, you're sort of going past first or past sixth gear. And then on the radio, they're trying to explain it to me, go past sixth gear and to the right. And it took them a while to say you have to pull the gear stick up towards the roof and then across and forward. So I was stuck there for a lap and the whole field went past me while I was bum out on the last corner. So yeah, that's probably my memory. And the car was pink, I think, as well.
If memory serves me right, though, so 99, you drove with Wayne Wakefield, who you'd race against later on in Konica, but were you in the car or was he in the car? It got replayed so many times. Red Commodore being escorted hard into the wall on the run up to the cutting. I can't quite remember who did what to who there. Were you in the car? Were you the one who got sent?
Mate, all you have to do is look at the little midget that hops out and runs for his life.
That's you.
And realise that it's me. Yeah. It was got sent into the wall, which wasn't ideal. Back in those days, you never really had a nice insert. So the cushions that I had behind my back and the seatbelts that kind of held you in, no wing seats, all that sort of stuff. It definitely put a mark on the old body. And I think Wakefield's later on, their mechanic told me that it actually bent the brake pedal. That's how hard I was standing on it when it hit the wall. But it was my first Bathurst experience in a supercar, so it was less than ideal.
It's one way to make it memorable, but I think it was it the Terry Finnegan's car with Darren Pate at the wheel that was kind of side by side going up the hill there, and then I think you were slightly in front and just got sort of sent, and then straight off in the fence.
Yeah, so I passed him at 2 and obviously got a little bit of a bad run on the exit. So stayed left as we went into the kink for the cutting, and he decided to take his normal line and turned into my rear quarter, and I went outwards towards the concrete.
And it made the highlights for Channel 10's V8 Supercar, that famous RPM music. I mean, it was in all of those packages for a very long time, so it was, I guess it's one way to make a mark. But is that one of the biggest crashes that you've had in your time?
I haven't had that many crashes in my life. Yeah, no, I have. At that point, it was my biggest crash. One of my biggest crashes. I guess it's still a reasonable one, when there's fire and things like that. So I guess you could say it was one of the biggest crashes, yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's
They're
definitely up
never
there.
they're never small at Bathurst though either.
That's true. That's very true. So not the way to finish your first Bathurst 1000, or not to get to finish it. But so if we fast forward into 2000, the Konica Series is great. You win that title. So rather than go and drive then for another team at the endurance races, you guys and Terry Steer, your car owner, from memory, you went and bought a newer car. So you kind of went, we're going to do this our own way. Was that I guess at the time you could do that with the way that V8 Supercars was. You could kind of run your own team and kind of forge your own pathway a bit there.
Yeah, it's probably not a great car to buy. Whatever Terry's plan was, bought an X-Paul wheel, BHAG built AU Falcon. I think that was the guy who built them back then.
Yep, correct.
I think its history was pretty bad. It had a big clash with Dick Johnson at Lakeside on the last corner prior to us getting it. But that was a purchase that Terry made, and we decided obviously to have a crack at Bathurst, which you could do back then because it was you want to roll up and have a go, you go for it.
Yeah, and that's what you guys most definitely did. I think it was Ian Moncrief, the Queenslander, who brought a bit of funding to co-drive with you and get that all rolling together. But tell me, mate, at the time, and I've spoken to Cameron McLean, for instance, and there were a lot of those smaller single car teams. Paragon was one, yourself with Terry Steer, and I think it was RPM International Racing from memory off the top of my head. In that period, you could actually go and sort of pull all this together and make it all happen. But when did you first get on the radar of a main game team that was on the phone? Was it Glenn Seaton? Was that the first real possibility of getting your seat into one of those, level one, full-time professional cars rather than sort of the DIY approach?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've got to thank Glenn for a lot of things. Glenn was the first main game team to obviously give me a shot at an enduro, and it was a Rick Bates, I think I drove with initially at the Queensland 500. So I think it was
Neil Bates. Yeah, Neil Bates.
Neil Bates. Sorry, Neil.
Yep.
You have to refresh my memory. So
there's that many Bates brothers and Bates cousins and sons and nephews. There's plenty of them. There's more of them now than there ever was back in those days. But if my memory serves me right, Dino, if we go back, so in 2000...
Yeah, so 2000 I did the Queensland race with Batesy.
Correct, because Wayne Gardner wasn't available and could only do Bathurst. So that's your first crack at a main game. You didn't run your own car for Queensland, but you did for Bathurst. So was there a connection because you had raced the ex-Seaton car in Konica, or how did that all come to be?
To be honest, I got no idea.
It's a while ago now.
I wasn't really in charge of my own things. I think obviously with Terry and my old man, but obviously, there was a connection with buying Glenn's car. I remember Kevy from Dunlop. Obviously, after the first round, I think he gave Glenn some feedback on my tyre wear and things like that. So I guess, even from round one with the Konica Series, main game teams were obviously already interested in the series. It eventuated obviously to me in that year 2000 driving with Batesy at the Queensland 500. I think we had a mechanical failure, so we didn't finish. But it still kind of got me out there in all the practice sessions and for whatever amount of driving I did with Glenn's team.
It's always an interesting one when you look back on these things from guys who've had long careers, but is that the point where, I mean, sometimes you flick from paying to go racing or scraping together a deal or someone else is doing it? Is it different when finally, and I'm presuming it's somewhere around this point, someone says, no, you come and drive my car and I'll pay for you to drive it. You don't have to bring any money. Here's some money for your services. Here's some expenses. We'll cover that. We'll do this. We'll sort that. That's kind of the breakthrough next level moment when that happens. And I guess that's around that period for you.
Yeah, for sure. That first year, like when you're starting out, I guess you're kind of happy to to do things for nothing when you live at home and you've got no expenses and no responsibilities. Get me in, get me in, get me in. I don't think that happens so much anymore, but back then it could. And yeah, it's to be able to then be on the other side and not pay for it anymore and get paid to do what you enjoy doing and are good at. To be able to end up on the other side is pretty cool.
Absolutely, that's when you know that you've got to that next step. In early 2001, there's an opportunity for a few drivers because Neil Crompton leaves Glenn Seaton to go to Gibson Motorsport and link up with Craig Lowndes. Cameron McLean's in the mix. Steve Richards ends up getting the seat. Are you in the mix there? Did you have a deal done, or do you think you were going to be in that number 6 car for 01?
Yeah. Look, I mean, as far as I was aware, we were on the way to being in the FTR as a junior or as a driver. But obviously, musical chairs and Steve was already an established driver and a lot more experience. Ended up landing him the seat to the point where obviously I ended up just being put in as the enduro driver with him that year. But look, again, sliding doors.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Who knows what that would have done if I ended up there and had Glenn as a mentor, because he's an awesome guy. It would have been a different life story. But I'm not about to go, that ruined my career or anything. It is what it is.
Opportunities, sliding doors, all that stuff. It's a theme of all of these podcasts that I do with guys of what happened and what could have happened. It's I mean, you could always play the what ifs for a long time. But what did happen though is that you did drive in the enduros with FTR. You drove the RPM car during the year, but I tend to remember, because the grid sizes were getting bigger, it was getting harder to qualify. I think pre-qualifying was kicking in around that time too. And wasn't there around maybe Calder or somewhere like that you didn't make the field, and then kind of the wheels literally fell off the RPM thing around that time? Was it just getting way too hard to compete with the big dogs at the time, or did something fall apart internally, or what happened? Because that kind of fizzled out, that relationship there.
Yeah, I mean, I think budget as always is something. I think that year at the Adelaide 500, we had a good showing in the first race, finishing in the top 10. A second race after a pit stop, the wheel came loose and they ended up, without brakes going into the what is now turn 8, was a chicane back then, and had a reasonably high speed backwards crash because it just locked the rear brakes and not the front. What else did we have after that? I can't remember what the rounds were, but as you said, there was pre-qualifying. Calder jammed throttle in qualifying and ended up cleaning up poor old Paul Radicic, who was on the outside of turn 1 trying to get out of the way. Obviously it just fizzled out to sort of budget constraints and competitive fields. I remember Jason Richards and I were the ones that were pre-qualifying back then, and if the car was underprepared and it wasn't set up to the best of its capacity, it was you were traveling. I think we travelled to Darwin and didn't make pre-qualifying, so that's a fair old budget to throw away.
It's a lot of money, to tear up to just get there, let alone not getting to turn some laps in the actual races. But tell me about teaming up with, I mean, you lost, or you could say you lost, or however you look at it. Steve Richards ends up in that full-time seat at Fort Tickford Racing, but the way that the world works is kind of weird. You still drove with the Richards at the Enduros that year, but it was Jim. I mean, you got to drive one of your first, you're up to your third Bathurst by that stage, with Jim Richards. I mean, who at that stage has won the thing 6 times. He wins it one more time the next year with Mark Scaife at HRT. Tell me about driving with Jim, because, I mean, he is such a cool cat who has done so much in his career, is so understated. What was he like to team up with for a young bloke who was still finding his way with a guy who, I mean, I think he's in his 50s by that stage, and he was still winning Nations Cup and all sorts of cool things.
Yeah, I mean, as a young guy, pairing up with someone of that caliber, it's like, okay, like this is big time now. Height difference has always been a thing, a challenge for me. But back then we had, I think we had sliding seats and a cushion. But yeah, I guess I was just again still just doing my thing. It was a little bit more professional though than the previous year, being with an outfit like Glenn's. And back then though, you were still the second car, I guess, at those events, because your two main guys were together. So your engineers and things like that are guys that would come that weren't normally part of the team. But still awesome, and I still took it very professionally as the whole crew did on that car. And I don't remember the specifics of what Jim would have been telling me, but I still remember obviously listening to him and taking everything in that I could.
He didn't try to convince you of Chinese the week at Bathurst. I mean, we learnt from doing his book that when he ran his Porsche program and with Carl Batson and all the boys who used to work with him on that, he'd always want to go to a Chinese restaurant for dinner. He didn't manage to convince you to do that for your Bathurst prep.
Not from memory. I mean, obviously the old house, or the house on the outside of Turn 1, was the Tickford or the FTR or Glen Seaton Racing stable. So it would have been some sort of cook up. I can't remember again back to those days, but too many knocks to the head since then. But yes, Chinese doesn't ring a bell on my memory. Thanks.
Oh well, because he wasn't running the show. He was turning up and working for Glenn that weekend. That's probably why. From memory, I think you finished fifth at Bathurst that year, which is and you just said before a point that some of our slightly younger listeners might not remember. In those days, you could pair up the regular full-time drivers. They didn't have to stay in their own cars with co-drivers. That was a rule that came in 2009. So that opened up the opportunity for, they were sort of more looking at giving young drivers from Konica or Formula Holden or Formula Ford that opportunity in the second car, because it wasn't the primary focus. All the eggs are kind of usually in the lead car basket. So it opened up opportunities that perhaps these days the pressure's there because they need two guns and they want experience. So those opportunities kind of don't really float. But something else that was a cool opportunity that year that I just thought of the other day, there's a couple of years in a row, Dino, on the Gold Coast that Honda got right behind a young guns race where they took a whole pile of you young crazies and let you loose in Integra Type Rs that were pretty cool, funky, fast little road cars. From memory, you won that year, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I think our year was a lot more tame than the year before, which was Ambrose and Bezzy and that.
That was wild.
They tore up some shit. So yeah, we got written the right act. But yeah, the year that I did it, we had Will Power, Lukey Yulden, Peter Hackett, Winterbottom. Was Whincup in it? I don't think he was he?
Oh yeah, I think he was.
He was?
He was.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, I don't know how Peter Hackett got in because it was supposed to be under 25.
He might have run the Russell Ingall-John birth certificate program.
Yeah, fair enough. But no, it was I think Will and I had a good battle the whole weekend, and yeah, I ended up coming out on top and had this large, oversized check handed to me.
And did you get to keep it all?
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Don't know. Can't remember.
Anytime you get a large, oversized check, that's a good end of a race weekend. The novelty check's a good thing. I do rate it. I rate it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it only makes me think of Happy Gilmore, though. It's the only time I can think of oversized novelty checks and he's shoving them in his car.
Actually, it's timely that you mentioned that because I think Happy Gilmore 2's not far away. So hopefully there's a few more oversized checks in that one. But if we rewind to that point, Marcus Ambrose had used the Young Guns thing on the Gold Coast the previous year as a really great launching pad. So it was another little way for you to remind people that still here, can do it, beating guys who are doing good things in their categories and their cars. But 02, there's not a full-time drive. It's a co-drive with Briggs, with Max Wilson. So I'm not sure how your Portuguese was by the end of that year, but what a cool bloke Max was and still is. But are you starting to think the doors are not opening here? I've done, one Konica. I've done good stuff. I finished fifth at Bathurst with Jim Richards. But is this when you look back and go, I didn't have someone out there beating on the door for me, or really blowing my trumpet to teams and managing me and pushing me around and sort of shopping me to teams. Are you doing that all on your own back then, or have you sort of got anyone at all that's out there pushing your wheelbarrow?
Like I said, yeah, I mean, having a mentor or someone in your corner is paramount to your career. And I guess hard work doesn't always pay off, but I didn't really have anyone doing that for me at that stage. It just sort of, Briggsy signed me up for the enduros. Pairing up with Max, obviously, was the first time I actually was cramped in a car. I used to go to the race meetings with the teams throughout that whole year just to be part of it, as you do as a young guy, and all the test days. But that's right. That year ended up being a few drives anyway. I'm sure you'll get to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't really have anyone pushing anything for me. Not that I'd given up. I mean, like I said, I was just happy driving a car. I kind of never really had set myself goals. And as far as having the drive to push everyone out of the way to try and get to a full-time drive wasn't something that I'd sort of thought about. I was just like, if it happens, it happens.
Well, it kind of did happen in a way, too, because you drove with Max in the better electrical car at the Enduros, but then they were running two better cars, but they also had the Cat car, which was kind of the first Briggs car post, when John Bowe was in the Cat car. Simon Wills parted ways with the team. I think Greg Ritter might have driven on the Gold Coast, and then you drove, I think, Sandown and maybe New Zealand late in the year. So you kind of got the taste then of your own car in the main game, level one team, and I guess that's what helped then show John Briggs and his team that, hey, you're the guy that we need to put in the car, or one of the cars, full-time the year after. Is that how you remember it, that was kind of, in a way, a little audition to sort of show exactly what you could do?
Yeah, I mean, I remember this bit being at the panel shop working for the old man, and he goes, "Oh, Briggsy's on the phone." So went to the office, and John's like, "Oh, Simon's out of money, and I'd love to put you in the car. There's a shortfall. If you can get this much together, we'll put you in." And I said, "Look, thanks for thinking of me, but I've got a brother and a sister, and I'm not going to ask my old man to put his hand in his pocket. Happy to drive for nothing." He goes, "Oh, okay, I'll find someone else." And then he rings back, and the price went to here. I said, "Nah." And then he rings back a third time, and he said, "Yep, all right, I'll put you in." So I guess from an early standpoint, that was where I was on that side of things. And then I got to do 2 rounds with him and had some fun. I think we had a reasonable result. I think I was the first Ford in New Zealand. And it was enough to sort of show what I could do.
And as I mentioned, it led to 2003, you and Paul Radisich to the full-timer seat, and the new cars. BA Falcon came on stream then, which was kind of the thing that Ford fans had been craving for a while, because the AU was, well, it was an AU. Do you remember when you got that call to say, "Righto, mate, you're on," and you get your first full-time main game seat? I guess you're at the panel shop again. The phone rings again.
So Briggsy ended up basically signing me to be owned by him.
As in managed by him as well?
Yeah. So he signed me up to a 10-year deal, and basically I just was employed by him. He wouldn't let me move to Queensland. He said, "You'll just come here and party." And I mean, I don't know why I agreed to that. That's probably where I should have been more pushy and had a mentor and things like that. But that wasn't who I was. But so, started obviously 2003 with Briggs, and went to test days, went back to Sydney and worked in the panel shop and did my training of it. It's 5 o'clock in the morning and went to work and then went to race meetings. And had young Jeremy Moore and Mark Dutton as my data engineer and engineer for the year.
And those blokes have kind of made names for themselves. You launched them, mate. You launched them. You got them going. I'm absolutely fascinated to dive, because when we talk about 10-year deals, obviously David Reynolds did one with Erebus that we know how that ended. Craig Lowndes had a 10-year deal with Tom Walkinshaw back in the day that they kind of had to unravel when he went to Ford. I just don't remember, or maybe we didn't know as an industry, the bones and the situation, or I don't recall that deal being so long. I mean, and I'm flabbergasted that normally when teams sign drivers, they want them moving to be where they are and be in the workshop regularly and be around the team and really ingrain themselves with the engineers and the mechanics and the office staff and everybody. I'm scratching my head on why. I mean, I don't remember you as having a crazy wild party boy reputation back then, Dino. So someone must have dobbed on you somewhere that you had one big night out and it worked against you.
Yeah. Anyway, it did make it hard thinking back about it because debriefs and things like that. There was no conference calls after a race meeting, and years later, I hear Dutto was saying that Radicic, who I thought was my team mate, was saying negative things about me in debriefs and things like that. He goes, I was following Dean on track and he did this. And it's like, if you threaten, that's fine, but don't fucking throw someone under the bus. I was at one of the race meetings when he had a crash. I was there helping the boys get his car back on track. So I was a nice guy. But I guess the older generation are always going to feel threatened and try and protect their interests. It's, as I said, motorsport is a selfish industry and you have to be a see you next Tuesday.
And everyone else can add the dots up there to figure out what you exactly mean there. But if you do the acronym, you might figure it out. So in that 10-year deal, was that a guaranteed you're going to drive a race car for 10 years, or it's just a case of he's going to manage you? So you might end up somewhere else, not just at his team, but basically you've sort of signed over your management rights for a way to best describe it.
Yeah, correct. It was, he could put me wherever he wanted, basically. So he was my manager, and the deal was, with him, and then, I guess he owned that team. But yeah, technically, I could have, if it went further and we didn't end, then I could have ended up at another team. But employed by John.
Yep. Tell me about Mark Dutton and Jeremy Moore back in the day. Obviously, our listeners know them so well for their work at Triple Eight over the years, and JJ obviously with his time with Porsche, and now he's going to be off at GM. But I mean, tell me about those guys back in that period. The work ethic, the way they operated, you can sort of understand why they've gone on to do the things that they've done, having known them and worked with them back in the day, or is it something that really came on strong perhaps when Roland came along and that helped accelerate those blokes?
Yeah, look, I mean, put three young guys, one inexperienced driver and two inexperienced engineers, although qualified. And as far as calculated changes go, I don't think we had one for most of the year. You'd come in and give some feedback, and I think we'd change everything on the front and everything on the rear and go back out and so yeah, we were a little bit loose on that thing. It was just throw things at it and send it again. But I've spoken to Dado before. He goes, "Oh yeah, we were just young guys, and you learn as you go along. I think by the end of the year we were having some solid results, but the start of the year wasn't the best."
When did I remember that? In that year in 2003, maybe it's halfway through the year or that stage, Paul Dumbrell's under the gun at Larry Perkins's and you're under the gun at Briggs. When did you start to feel that, was there a particular call, argument, debrief, race where the relationship kind of took a turn? Because it sort of was, blink and you miss it. It kind of hadn't got that far into it, and then you're under the gun, and it seemed to unravel from the outside pretty quickly. But do you remember where the turning point kind of was?
I mean, it was a difficult year for me. I mean, I ended up with my alopecia early in that year, which kind of threw me off a little bit. Trying to work out how to deal with that. Not that it affected me physically, but mentally it did knock me around a little bit. And I think if you look at the results, obviously there was quite a dip, and then when I sort of just pressed on with things, the results improved. But yeah, obviously Triple Eight, we're on the way in, and the sponsor wanted Max, and I remember sitting in the car with Roland out the back of the pits, and them letting me down gently, but keeping me on for enduros. It's I was kind of expecting it. It's hard, I mean, I at least got a whole season, not like Jack Doohan and Liam Lawson. But again, it's a sliding doors moment. If I knew that the things I know now, I would have done things differently. But I guess just that whole year was a little bit of an up and down, and I mean, I couldn't tell you one moment when all of a sudden it was like, oh, you're no longer going to be here, or. But yeah, I mean, John's relationship and mine was pretty tense halfway through the year. Not that there was much communication though.
And did that mean obviously the team was sold to Roland and Triple Eight came on board later that season? But that deal that you had with him, how did that all? Did you just both unravel that, or how did that all dissipate?
Yeah, it was pretty easy to sort of negotiate, just terminating it. I got out of that pretty quickly at the end of that year and pressed on with my own thing.
Yep. You mentioned the alopecia, and it was right at that point. So I think a lot of people out of history and their memory bank link that happening with what was happening with the racing stuff. But correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a completely separate scenario of how that all played out and how all of a sudden the hair went kaput. Like it wasn't to do with the stress and the grief and the drama of the racing side of things. This was a separate thing.
Yeah, look, I mean, there is stress-related hair loss, but that's normally patchy and things like that. Mine was probably more to do with starting out. I remember towards the end of 2002, like I had a rash on my face, and I was a tight-ass race car driver, and I had a manky old helmet. And I'd take antibiotics for it. It would clear up, so I'd just stop the course because I don't really like continuously taking antibiotics. So for 6 months, that was sort of on and off. And what they think is that a hair follicle got infected, and then the body started attacking the hair follicle because that's what they call an autoimmune condition. So basically, my body creates antibodies to hair. It got confused with what was the infection and what was the hair. So quite quickly, I went from, I think my last eyelash from the day of my hair starting to fall out was like 3 months, which was quite rapid and scary as hell. And I guess, first year full-time racing, it was like, how do I even, I hadn't heard about it till I got it. How do I even describe to people what's happened? Or, and people obviously always think, stress is like, everyone's got stress in their life. But I guess, once I got over the whole, how am I going to deal with this, just enjoy it. Then, you might even remember I bared a wig for a while, but that was a stupid idea. And then just embraced it, moved on, focused on my driving.
I do remember that, mate. I remember you running the wig there for a little bit, and you kind of, I mean, when you think about it, it's a natural thing for, what are you by that stage? 2003, you're what, a 23, 24-year-old? Yeah, you're a young guy out and about doing your thing in the world, and suddenly having something like this rear its head is not part of the plan, and this is strange and unique and different, and it's sort of the obvious thing that someone would do in that situation is to, and then there came a point where you just went, no, stuff it. Like, what's the point in trying to do that? This is me. This is how it is, and you've rocked it ever since, basically.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's lots of benefits, I can tell you.
Shampoo savings.
Once I was shampoo, razors, but one of the good things was a lot of parents that saw it, their kids, because it's most common in kids when your immune system's still building up when you're younger. So it helped a lot of young kids that saw what I was doing, and even parents, because their kids, I couldn't imagine what it was like to deal with as a kid. It was hard enough as an adult, but being to help some kids that had been going through the same thing. But as you said, this is my image now, and everyone knows me this way, and I won't go grey or won't have hair growing out my nose or out my ears when I'm older.
The bright side of it all. And probably, I mean, what are we now? It's 22-ish years since that happened. So, I mean, how old are you now?
44.
So therefore, we've known you half your life with hair and half your life without hair. So give it another year and we'll have known you without hair for longer than we ever knew you with hair.
Yep, that's it.
And that's where we're going to leave you hanging for more on the V8 Sleuth Podcast for Autobarn. Now, part 2 of my chat with Dean takes us into the next phase of his career, including why he ended up at Dick Johnson Racing, how he arrived and departed Gary Rogers Motorsport, the success and heartbreak of Bathurst alongside David Reynolds, and much, much more. Part 2 is not too far away. In the meantime, though, check out the rest of our episodes in the archive, and I'll catch you next time with another edition of the V8 Sleuth Podcast for Autobarn. Chat to you then.